The women to be involved in the decision making is one issue. So if a woman is going forward to achieve a divorce, she may have gone through a difficult marriage, she might already be vulnerable, she may have already been abused at the hands of men, and then she has to go and present her case to another panel of men and justify why she needs to achieve a divorce. Do you think that's a reasonable thing for a woman to go through?
Well, this is one of the things our research has shown as well as the testimonies that we've gathered, is that the Iranian Kurdish Women's Rights Organization, for example, with the cases that they've received, they found that the process of these courts itself is tantamount to abuse, because it continues to perpetrate the sort of abuse that the women have faced. It justifies very often the domestic violence they faced. Very often women are told to stay silent, they're not allowed to speak and defend themselves. The aim of the councils are very often to keep the family together, because don't forget, men have unilateral right to divorce, which is why women are going to these councils. And women's right to divorce is very limited. If the husband refuses to give her a divorce because he can marry more than one wife, she then needs a khula divorce, where she actually has to give up all of the financial dowry involved in order to get that divorce and be free. So in a sense, it is stacked up against women.
Then we need a campaign to educate everybody that civil divorce should count as an Islamic divorce as well. That's going to take time. And eventually you will end up with a situation somewhere down the line where Muslim women will be less reliant on Sharia councils, more reliant on the British justice system, but obviously this is where the government needs to step in. And actually most Sharia councils will be redundant in the future. Surely this is a more pragmatic approach.
I think they are actually parallel legal systems, because they call themselves courts, they call themselves judges. They imply that they are, I'm sorry if you don't mind not interrupting me. So they do call themselves courts, they do call themselves judges, and that's what a parallel legal system means. It doesn't necessarily have to have, the force of the law behind it, but they do imply that they are the law, and they do tell women, if they don't abide by these rules, that they are not proper Muslims. And I think this is one of the things that Islamists do. They make it seem as if there's one Sharia law, it's the Sharia, and people who don't abide it are apostates, and so on and so forth.
I know everybody's itching to come in. Okay, Nadsha.
There's a couple of questions really, but first, Doctor, can I just pick up what you've said? The law of a land should apply to all, were your words. Isn't that the case as it is? As far as I'm concerned, if I walk out and commit a crime, or I walk out and break the law of this land, it will apply to me whether I'm black, white, male, female. The law of a land does apply to all, doesn't it?
Not when it comes to
sorry, it's a yes or no. Am I right in saying the law of this land applies to everybody equally? The legal system in this country?
It should be, it's not done yet.
Okay. So that brings me on to the next question. So I enjoy two cultures. I'm British, I'm Muslim. If I just use my Britishness, I can actually have a relationship and live with somebody, not have marriage, have a civil partnership, and that's open to me. Am I right? Mm-hmm. As a Muslim, I choose my code of conduct if I choose to have a nikah, and that's my choice. Mm-hmm. So why should that be governed by the state? If that's my code of conduct, I'm trying to understand why should that? Why should anybody govern my choices, whether I decide to live with a partner, whether I decide to... Doesn't that actually go against human rights? And you're telling me, you're talking to me about human rights?
I'm very glad that you're using the word human rights, because the issue here, the core of it, human rights. How do we support and protect women? You and I, we both practice our religion. When we got married, we had a nikah. I had a nikah. But that said, I know very well that these systems are voluntary. I know that I could opt out. A woman in a closed society, in closed community, who doesn't know her rights are left, these women are left vulnerable to the system. So from this perspective, it's not about human rights here. It's like the protection of the human rights of these. A system that allows the most vulnerable to be exploited is not a fair system. And that's the problem of the issue, the core of the issue.
So rather than abolishing the system, because I make a choice, I'm an informed person whose mother served 14 years for killing an abusive partner. I've led a campaign with staff for Black Sisters for 20 years ago. I'm speaking from my experience, having been forced into marriage at 15 years old. I make a choice to choose my religion. So why should the state be policing my choices as a Muslim woman? And what I'm hearing is that to abolish all of that takes away my human right to have a choice.
No,
So how do I explain that to Muslim women in my constituency? It wouldn't wash.
No, it's a very good argument. But that said, with all due respect, what we are saying, we would like to regulate the right to have a religious divorce in a way that protect the woman.
I'm all for protection, but I'm just not for the abolition. I'm just not.
But also, do you mind if I just say something as well?
Absolutely, please do.
I think the thing is there's a difference between the right to religion, which obviously people have, versus the right to religious courts. As some Muslim women who are part of our campaign say, Sharia courts are not the sixth pillar of Islam. There are lots of Muslim women who do not go to Sharia courts. They are still good Muslims. My point is that, you know, we're talking about of abolishing a system that is portraying itself to the government. It says we're just a mediation body, but to the women who go to it, they say their rules are binding. There's no right to appeal. If they don't listen to the rulings, that they are not proper Muslims, they're accused of zina and adultery and all sorts of other things.
I have two questions for you, Mr. Mozzie. One is, the first one is just a yes or no. You talk about parallel legal system. Is it right that any decision made by any Sharia council, is it legally binding in this country according to the law of this land? Yes or no?
Well, it doesn't matter if it's legally binding
I'm just
or
asking for a yes or no
There
answer.
is no yes or no. Because
But there is. It's not legally binding.
It doesn't matter.
Okay,
Because
can I just move on to my
it
next
doesn't matter
one?
if it's not legally binding, because for the women, and especially the vulnerable women who go
So it's
to
not
them,
a parallel legal system then, is it?
it
Mr. Mozzie?
is, because the law of God is the most, you know, it can be the most frightening thing to disobey the rule of God. And when you go to a court of God, and where they say that the rules are divine, and if you don't abide by these rules, you can go to hell, you're committing zina,
But
you're
Mr.
committing
Mozzie,
apostasy.
according to
It
your
makes
blog,
it
which I
very,
read
very
earlier,
dangerous and difficult.
according to the blog that I read earlier, this isn't just about Sharia courts. If we were to look at your implementation of the view of the world, we wouldn't have any. The majority of the discrimination would be faced by the 33 million Christians in this country, because you'd have a way with Christianity, you'd have a way with, and this is according to your blog, with any religious institution.
This is not about, no.
But it is, isn't it?
No,
Because what
the
you're saying
difference
is you're denying everybody's
no, people
religious
have a
human
right
rights.
to religion or not having a religion. However, it doesn't mean because you're a Christian you need to go to an ecclesiastic court for your divorce. If you're Jewish, you have to go to the Beth Din. If you're Muslim, you have to go to the Sharia court. If you're Hindu, you have to go to some Hindutva court. The point is that we are first and foremost citizens in this country. There are rights that have been fought for over centuries for women. Equal, where they have equal rights, where their testimony is not worth half that of a man's, where men don't have unilateral rights to divorce, where women have to go through a million loopholes to get their basic right, where domestic violence by some of the Sharia judges is considered fine, where the judge will ask the woman, well, did you ask him why he beats you? Is it because you didn't cook dinner, or is it because you're going out with your friends? Where you have a Sharia judge saying that marital rape is not a crime, it's not an act of aggression. Calling it rape is the act of aggression. In this situation, clearly there's a problem.
Agree.
So it's not an attack on the right of religion.
Okay.
So please
No.
don't make it such.
I agree. I'll make my final point. I absolutely agree that we have inequalities in the Sharia system. I absolutely agree one woman abused is one too many. I absolutely hold those values, absolutely run through me. What I don't agree, and what I'm looking at, is in this country, our first female judge was 1967. It was only a few years ago that we referred to young CSE victims as child prostitutes. We go through change. And what we don't do is throw the baby out with the bathwater. What we do is we reform legal systems. That is what we do as lawmakers. So what we do is we listen to people, we listen to their concerns, and we amend the law accordingly. What we don't do is do away with something that a community finds very valuable. And quite frankly, the people that I've I've been talking to in the last 24 hours certainly have told me that there is an air of Islamophobia about this, there is an air of racism about this whole debate, and that needs to be taken.
Okay. I'm going to...
Because I'm being accused of certain things.
Yeah.
Can I
Sorry,
just-
the whole
Yeah, I
debate,
think-
not about
okay,
you,
no.
not about you.
Well, it is because
Okay.
It's about the whole
can I
debate.
just
Ms. Marzi,
make a-
yes, you can come back on it, and then I'm going to move to David
I
Burrows.
think the fact of the matter is that you can be critical of religious rules and religious courts and do it out of a defense of women's rights. You know, you don't need to be Muslim to, for example, you don't need to be gay to defend gay rights. You don't need to be a migrant to defend the rights of refugees and migrants. And you don't need to be Muslim or, an adherent of these courts to see that there's a problem here. There is a problem. And I think that Islamophobia and this accusation is often used in order to silence any criticism on courts which are highly discriminatory. I think we need to have one law for all. People have a right to religion. They absolutely do. They have a corresponding right to be free from religion as well. We often forget that right. But nonetheless, to say that then we need courts which are looking at the issue of women's rights and the rights in the family from a fundamentalist, from an Islamist perspective, is dangerous, and it is leaving the most vulnerable to the mercy of these courts.
Okay, thank you. David Burrows.
As much as you may have you and your personal choices, the fact is may well set precedents which could be illegal or unacceptable to British to British citizens, which we're all part of.
My response...
And so I'm just asking whether, for all the concerns we may have, there may be a structural flaw that is impossible to get over.
What I would say is that in terms of the solutions for me, it would be to look at, for example, the issue around the Islamic divorce and to have those identified and accepted and put into law, and the issues that aren't compatible not to be looked at.
I'm just worried about a kind of a tendency that every time that someone comes with a legitimate critique of certain practices or groups, that this person will be labeled Islamophobic. But if you may allow me, there is a political dimension to this issue. Whether we like it or not, there is a political dimension to it. The first Sharia Council that was created was in 1982. And if you look at those who created it, these have transnational Islamist movements. Jama'at al-Islamiyya, Salafi movement, all of these. And that said, it came within a context, a political context where Islamism was on the rise. So there is a political dimension to this that we cannot ignore. That said, I'm not excluding the facts that you have, because of the re-Islamization that took place here in Britain, specifically in certain close communities, that there's a certain kind of need that aroused. And I showed it also in the book, where you have certain people, concerned people, who are trying to solve the problems for women who are stuck in these religious marriages, and they would like to have religious divorces, and they're helping them.
Okay.
So not everybody is an Islamist, but there is an Islamist dimension to this. That said, at the same time, yes, a religious divorce is important.
Okay.
For someone, and please, because it's like, not all, this discussion shouldn't only be led by women of faith.
It's about us. Okay.
No, it's about citizens.
I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to have to hold you to it. I've let this panel run on because I think your evidence is all extremely important and I think has been very illuminating.